We're live now.
All right.
So the Faithful Fanatic Podcast is live. I have a very special guest joining me this evening, Larry Krueger of KNBR. Larry, I can't tell you how much this means to me to have you on. I told you this before we went live. I grew up listening to you and Gary on the radio for as long as I can remember. So it's a huge honor to have you on with me tonight. Thank you for your time.
Absolutely. Glad to be here, and let's talk some Niner ball, huh?
Let's talk some Niner ball. So free agency is right around the corner. The NFL cap has officially been set. Adam Schefter tweeted that out today. It's around $182.5 million. So the 49ers are working with around $24 to $26 million in cap space. I've been seeing different numbers, but what Larry and I are going to do for you this evening, we're going to go through position by position, take a look at which 49ers are getting ready to set the market, get ready to hit the market, I should say, and potential free agent targets that we like. So let's start off with the running back position. Typically, we'd start quarterback, but there's so much controversy around the quarterback position with the 49ers and what they should do with Garoppolo. We'll hold off on that for later, but starting at the looking at the running backs, Jerick McKinnon, Tevin Coleman, I don't think anybody is really expecting either one of them to get back. Raheem Mostert will be back next year. Jeff Wilson Jr. is coming off his best year. I'm expecting him to have a big role in 2021. Jamichael Hastie is another name, the undrafted free agent that the 49ers picked up. We saw glimpses of him over the course of the 2020 season. Larry, are there any running backs that have caught your eye that the 49ers may target this upcoming free agency or that you'd like to see them target? And this is a position they've been really willing to spend on in the past.
Well, I mean, there's running backs that I really like, but, it seems like in a team that has needs and in other places, and if you know the history of Shanahan, it's like it's really hard to envision them dropping big coin on a running back, especially. Yeah. But it's a weird situation. I mean, are you going to they have Mostert on a pretty reasonable deal. They have Wilson on a pretty reasonable deal. Are they going to look those guys in the eye and bring in some guy off the street and give them more money than what they're making? It's hard to envision. So I like Leonard Fournette quite a bit. I've always have. I've done some interviews with him. He's a Niner fan. He grew up in New Orleans, a big Niner fan. It would mean a lot to him to be a Niner. But, coming off the Super Bowl, I think you're going to pay a premium for him. So that kind of takes him off the list. The other name that I think makes a lot of sense is Jamal Williams, who, the Niners took the wrong Williams coming out of Utah a few years ago. They took Joe Williams. They should have taken this kid, Jamal Williams. He sat the bench behind Aaron Jones, which is good and bad. I mean, he's a good kid. Lee Steinberg's his agent. I've had him on my show. I think it would be, real popular move for him to join Shanahan's offense. I don't think they'll go running back in free agency. But if they did, I would put my money that it would be Jamal Williams. Kenyon Drake is another guy that fits. But once again, are you going to pay Kenyon Drake more money than you're paying Mostert and more money than Jeff Wilson? I think that would kill the vibe in the room. They really love Bobby Turner's ability to locate and identify good running backs before the draft, in the draft process that they can take on day 3 or even after the draft. And so I actually think if they're probably going to go, like a Puka Williams or a Javian Hawkins, a running back who with a lot of speed, who might be a little undersized, who they could play in a rotation. Other than that, I don't see them hitting running back. I'm a big fan of Adrian Peterson, and I think he's probably going to be out there, but I don't know that he fits Shanahan's system. But I think he'd be he's a nice back for sure. But I expect them to address running back more in the draft or even after the draft than in free agency.
Yeah, you'd think that they might have learned their lesson as far as spending big on a running back after what happened with Jerick McKinnon. They gave Tevin Coleman a nice hefty contract as well. But a couple of the names that I highlighted, I'm right there with you on Jamal Williams. I think he'd be an excellent fit in the 49ers offense if they do go the free agency route to pick up an additional running back. I mean, he's had over 400 rushing yards and over 200 receiving yards every year in his young NFL career. He plays second fiddle to Aaron Jones, so I can't really picture him getting a huge contract, but I think he'd be a great complement to what the 49ers already have with Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert. And how do you feel about a Matt Breida reunion? Because I like that second speed option. I don't think he'd be too costly. Could you see Matt Breida making a return?
I could. Yeah, that's a good call, actually, because the price tag on him is going to be very, very low. And we know that the fit is there. For me, it's just about durability. I mean, with him, but the price is going to be right. He didn't do anything in Miami. I mean, there was an opportunity there and he didn't take advantage of it. So yeah, I think I could see him, being a guy that they pick up at a very low price and bring back. I would not surprise me at all. That's the they're not going to go big name in free agency and running back. Jamal Williams might even be too big of a name.
Yeah.
It's going to be more like a Breida. It's going to be somebody that, is just on the edges, of the roster. I think they love speed, and that's a trait that, that is consistent with Shanahan running backs. They love guys in this outside zone that can get to the edges and at least threaten the edges so that you have cutback ability. If you don't threaten the edges, you don't have cutback ability. So that's the thing with Breida, and I'd be open to him returning for sure.
One more name, and I sent you the Mike Clay free agency cheat sheet, and this player's technically listed as a running back, but I personally see him more as a wide receiver. Cordell Patterson. That's a guy I would like to see the 49ers add, not just to the offense, but as a special teams kick returner, punt returner, because that unit, the special teams unit as far as return goes, was not very impressive last year, to say the least. Cordell Patterson was with the Bears this past year, the last couple years, I believe, has kind of transitioned from wide receiver to running back, but I think he can be utilized in Kyle Shanahan's offense, similarly to Deebo Samuel, where he's getting those jet sweeps and getting out on the perimeter and really using the width of the field. How do you feel about Cordell Patterson?
Well, he's a utility, type player at this point. But I think that's a good call. He makes sense. I just think that his appeal around the league is going to be such where I think his price tag is going to be a little higher than they want to pay, especially in this market. That would be my only concern. But I think you're right. He's a Pro Bowl special teamer. You can use him in certain select running plays, and you can always use him as a receiver. He's a big-bodied guy. He's a proven entity. Once again, though, I think they have other needs. When you see that they have 9 holes in their secondary, when you see that they could have as many as 3 holes on a 5-man offensive line, and you look at the defensive line and all the free agents they have there, they gotta plug up some of these spots before I'm going to Cordell Patterson. I like Cordell Patterson, but to me that's like a luxury item. That's like that's like doing stonework in your driveway, but you don't have a roof on your house. You know what I mean? I'm not sure if it jives.
While we're talking about luxuries, Kyle Juszczyk is looked at as a luxury, and he's one of the bigger names that were previously on the 49ers getting ready to hit the open market. Is Kyle Juszczyk high up on your priority list as far as who the 49ers should bring back?
No doubt. He wants to be here. I believe there's some some speculation that maybe he would have desire to live in a different part of the country. I don't know him personally, but he is a perfect fit for this offense. The management, the coaching staff, the players, everybody respects this player tremendously. He's a receiver. He's a blocker. I was just saying to the guys on the show today that one of my favorite plays of the year last year was the Wildcat quarterback short yardage handoff to Kyle Juszczyk. And I think that could be a staple of their short yardage game and goal line game in the years ahead. So it's an interesting situation because he's got a certain amount of value. They probably overpaid him at times in the past. If it's supply and demand, there's not going to be a huge demand for him. We all know that he probably would like to stay, but they got to get him at the right price. So it's a little bit of a tricky negotiation, but I think at the end of the day, he's going to realize that he's best for them, they're best for him, and I think they'll get something done that makes sense for both sides.
It almost kind of reminds me of Draymond Green and the Warriors, where Kyle Juszczyk holds more value specifically to the 49ers. Like Draymond Green, if you were to trade him to another NBA team, he doesn't quite fit as well as he would, like he does on the Warriors. He has a very specific role, and he plays that role exceptionally well. Moving ahead to wide receivers. So the 49ers have Kendrick Bourne. They have Trent Taylor both getting ready to hit the open market. I don't really see this team being a big spender. Looking at the big names, there's some huge names in this upcoming wide receiver class with Juju Smith, Kenny Golladay, Will Fuller. There's big time names, but I don't really see them personally spending that kind of money on a wide receiver. Is there any wide receivers you'd be open to bargain buy for? Or Kendrick Bourne, is he looking to return? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think Bourne is looking to return. Now the question is, are they looking for him to return? He's had some inconsistencies. He's had some drops. I mean, he's a very popular guy in the room. He's a popular guy in the community. But, to what extent do you want to pay a guy based on that? We've seen some inconsistency in his play. One thing the one aspect of 49er football that got the least amount of attention last year was the how much they missed. They didn't stretch the field. So they had no passing game down the field. Now, it was blamed on the quarterback, maybe justifiably so. It was blamed on the offensive line. We know Mcglinchey and company took a lot of criticism. But name me the deep threat. Who's their deep threat? They have no deep threat. It's Richie James. It was supposed to be the kid from the Chargers who opted out. Travis Benjamin, and they have no deep threat. When they went to the Super Bowl, they had Ted Ginn. He's a deep threat. He's a legit deep threat. I don't know that player exists in this free agent market. The two receivers I like the most, the guy who I think I would extend for is Curtis Samuel. Curtis Samuel is a runner. He's a receiver. He's been underutilized in Carolina. He could be absolutely an all-pro player for the 49ers. You put Curtis Samuel in this offense, use him in a myriad of different ways. I think he makes a lot of sense. The other guy that I really, really like, you got to remember, what is the game plan for this 49er team offensively? They run the ball. They're a running football team. Corey Davis is one of the best downfield run blockers in all of football. Nobody talks about that because nobody ever talks about wide receiver blocking. It's like you want wide receivers who can block, but it's like one of those things that sounds good, but you don't actually prioritize that when it comes time to actually picking these guys up.
Yeah.
There's no question that the running back in Tennessee had a big year this year, partially because Corey Davis and A.J. Brown are dominant downfield blockers who can move bodies and create huge big playability for your running back. So I like Corey Davis, and I think Corey Davis was a top 5 pick. He hasn't really played to that. He's had some injuries, had some inconsistency. I think whoever gets Corey Davis now is going to get the best football that he plays in the NFL. I think it's coming in the next 2 or 3 years. We got a glimpse of it this year. We're going to see more of it down the road. So those two guys I have interest in. And I would have interest in anybody who, like Marquez Stevenson in the draft, somebody who can literally make you sweat, somebody like a Tyreek Hill, somebody who scares you. You have Deebo Samuel, he's going to run over you. You have Ayuk, he's a tremendous run after the catch guy. Now you need the receiver who creates space offensively. That is a threat down the field. The 49ers had the worst downfield passing attack in the league this year, and part of it is because they didn't have this weapon. So it plays like it's not a need, but if you get into watching film and you back up and you take the all-22 look and you watch the way teams defend this football team, they will defend this team quite a bit differently if there is a legit vertical threat that other teams are afraid of. So I think getting that piece – in my opinion, is actually one of the real important keys of the offseason. And I think Samuel has enough speed to make it happen. Davis is not that kind of player, but they definitely could use some vertical threat. And I'll be eager to see who the fastest receivers are coming out of the workout season because I think I'm going to watch film on all of those guys because I think they have to get one of them.
Curtis Samuel's my dream free agent. Pairing him with Kyle Shanahan would be so exciting. I love to see Curtis Samuel in the 49ers offense. You're talking about getting that speed threat. John Ross has really had a very disappointing start to his NFL career. He's a free agent as well. I believe Larry, correct me if I'm wrong, he has the fastest 40-yard dash time to date, right? John Ross, set the record. Yep. He's
not going to cost anything. He's not going to cost anything because he hasn't done anything. I mean, the only thing about John Ross is get ready for nothing, right? Because that's what he's produced. Yep. So, you're right. It's a little bit of a flaw. He's fast, and there's no question he's going to stretch the field if he's on the field.
If he's on the field. Exactly. And that it's been hard for him to stay on the field. And I think this past year, there were times where he was just inactive, like a healthy scratch, but he's put up numbers when he's been able to stay on the field. He had 7 touchdowns in 8 games a couple years back. So the potential's there. And the quarterback play, we're going from Andy Dalton in this past year with Joe Burrow. The quarterback play, who knows what was really going on there. And what's tough with the 49ers is Jimmy Garoppolo is not a downfield quarterback. And with whether or not he is the starting quarterback next year is still up for discussion, up in the air. But I'd love to see John Ross, a guy that can really take the top off of a defense. And going back to Kendrick Bourne, who is getting ready to hit the open market, I think he priced himself out of the 49ers range. I compare him to Tyrell Williams, who signed with the Lions. He got like $5 or $6 million, and they have very comparable numbers. So I think Bourne might be in for a surprising $4, $5, $6 million pay rate. That's how much I can see him getting on the open market, and that's too much for the 49ers. Looking at tight end, they're pretty set. George Kittle's coming back. They just signed Ross Dwelly. They have the kid from Georgia that they drafted this past year. Offensive line, Trent Williams is unquestionably the team's biggest priority, and there's a lot of depth upcoming this free agency at the center and guards position. Where do you think the 49ers should go to fix that offensive line?
Well, okay. First of all, everybody's got a different perspective on this. I think the offensive line is the most falsely maligned group on the team. Now, there are people that I watch every game and the line's a joke. No, it isn't. The line, Jimmy was one of the most, he was pressured, I think, 37th out of 42 teams. So it wasn't like he faced a lot of pressure. He was sacked the most of anybody. So everybody looks at that and says, oh, the line's a joke. Is the line a joke, or is your quarterback unable to deal with pressure, identify it, and escape it? And I think that's really the case going on here. Trent Williams, it sounds like we're getting indications that, he at least is teasing the idea of coming back.
Exactly.
They better get him signed. I mean, they better get him signed, because I've looked at everything. I've looked at all the free agents. I've looked at the draft. There's like 3 or 4 people that can fill these roles, and they have one of them, and they have to get him signed. There's no free agent tackle that's out there that's going to give you a reasonable facsimile of what Trent Williams offers. There's nobody there. There are a couple guys in the draft, but you'd have to invest the 12th pick overall, and
exactly,
I don't think they want to do that. So, left to right, if you can get Trent Williams signed as your left tackle, you got Laken Tomlinson at left guard. Center is a need. I think Alex Mack makes sense. He was with Shanahan in Atlanta. He's not the same player that we saw coming into the league out of Cal. He's not even the same player that he was when they went to the Super Bowl in Atlanta with Kyle. But that's okay. He's still better than what they have. And they need to do a better job in the interior. One of the reasons they lost the Super Bowl to Kansas City was they could not block Chris Jones, and he dominated the game. And if you notice this last Super Bowl, Chris Jones did not dominate the game. Well, why is that? Because Tampa's line did a far better job against him than the Niner line did. Now, it was Ben Garland. It wasn't even the starting center, but it doesn't really matter. So Alex Mack, to me, makes sense at center. The name that's exciting to me is Kyle Long at right guard. I mean, Gabe Jackson. I like Gabe Jackson, but I'm not sure if Gabe Jackson fits their system. But I think Kyle Long, I would try to sign Alex Mack and play him at center, and sign Kyle Long and play him at right guard. I'm not as concerned as a lot of people with Mcglinchey. The one thing with Mcglinchey did this last year, and I haven't talked to him about it, but it was pretty clear just watching him. He got his body in great shape, but he lost a lot of the natural heft and leverage that he needs, that all offensive linemen need to anchor. So you don't want body beautiful offensive linemen. You want You want bad body looking offensive linemen. This year, he looks like he's like a good bodied offensive lineman. I want to see him eat more Twinkies. I want to see him seriously. I want to with some bad weight. I need more anchor ability from him. He didn't anchor. I'm not expecting Mike Mcglinchey to be able to contend with the top speed rushers in the game because that's not his game. But I do need him to anchor better against the bull rush. I mean, there were times where he just got escorted right into the lap of Jimmy Garoppolo, and it was embarrassing. He needs a bounce back year. He needs to get – it's not just in the weight room because it's really not weight strength. He needs to put on some weight. He needs to find his target weight where he has the best power leverage while having still the quickness that he needs. And he was just a little too light last year. I would say he needs 10 to 12 pounds more of heft. But I'm not giving up on him. I still think it was a good pick. And I do think he's a good football player. I think he's a really strong run blocker, and he needs to work on his pass pro. But I think, I'm satisfied with him. And McKivitz and Brunskill and some of the backups I like. I do think, though, they could use those two guys. If they could get Alex Mack and Kyle Long, I'd feel much better about their chances.
Yeah, I'm right there with you as far as how you laid everything out. You have to bring back Trent Williams at left tackle because you're going to have to spend that first-round pick. You just can't go into the season without a solid plan at left tackle, and this hasn't been something the 49ers have had to worry about in quite some time. They had Joe Staley for over a decade. The moment he retires or a few days after he retires, you get Trent Williams, who is a first-team all-pro left tackle in his own right. So they definitely need to pay Williams whatever is reasonable in their opinion just to get him back. That's for sure priority. Laken Tomlinson has been very underrated. I don't believe he's missed a game ever since the 49ers have traded for him. He's very reliable at left guard spot. Center, I'd like to see them bring in a veteran. You touched on Alex Mack. Corey Linsley's the other name, the Green Bay Packer center, who's probably going to cost a lot more than Mack, so he'll probably price himself out of the 49ers budget. But I'd like to see someone anchor that center position and really be a leader on the offensive line, like how Jonathan Goodwin came in 2011 with Jim Harbaugh and really helped solidify that 49ers offensive line. Right guard, they need to get some continuity along the offensive line because the right guard position has kind of been a turning door, just one guy after another with Mike Person and then all the guys that were here this past year at right guard. And Gabe Jackson, you touched on him already. There's Dan Feeney from the Chargers. There's a lot of guys getting ready to hit the market. So the 49ers need to add some depth pieces. I like Ben Garland, and he's a good interior depth piece on the offensive line. So those are the big names, Lindsey from Green Bay, and then Alex Mack from the Falcons. And Mack has expressed some interest to coming and rejoining Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco. We'll see if that plays out. Let's turn things over to the defensive side of the ball. And this is where I personally really, really get excited and touch on some of the edge rushers. So D Ford, the 49ers aren't able to cut him or really do anything up until he passes a physical, from my understanding. And he's owed so much money, but it's pretty safe, in my opinion, to assume that he will not be back. Looking at this edge rusher free agent class, there are so many options for the 49ers. Larry, which route would you like to see them go?
Well, as you said, I mean, there are a lot of options here. They're playing that wide 9 technique. So they want guys who are going to get up the field. And they're not necessarily worried about run stuffers as much as they're looking for guys who can bend the edge and put heat on the back. There's a bunch of them that are all pretty attractive. Some of these guys have big reps, though, and they're going to want huge dollars. And the two guys that I like the most, I'm a big fan of Leonard Floyd. Leonard Floyd was great coming out of Georgia, and it didn't happen for him right away. He's had some injuries. Last year he played with the Rams, and he really had a bust out year.
Yeah, he did.
He is a terror off the edge, and I just think that if you could get a guy like Floyd would give the Niners what they thought they were getting when they traded for D Ford. He's going to come flying off the edge. He would be my number one target in free agency. He'd be the guy that I'd pay the most money to. He'd be the guy that I would go after. And I think he's a difference maker. The other guy who's not going to cost you quite as much, but I definitely could see them going for, is Romeo Okwara from Detroit. I spent like an hour earlier this week looking at Okwara. He's an interesting guy in that I think he's an ideal fit in that wide nine. I think he is a far better football player than people realize because he has played on a Detroit line where there's just nobody who needs to be doubled on that line. And so he's never really played on a line where somebody that he's playing with is getting double teamed and he's one-on-one. Okwara also is phenomenal this year. He's perfected the technique that D Ford has perfected, which is the forced fumble on the way to the quarterback. Possession of the football means so much more than getting the sack on the quarterback. And D Ford realized that the last few years. Well, watching Okwara, he had 3 forced fumbles this year in limited snaps. That's a great number. And I think he's 25 or 26. He hasn't played a ton of football. The Notre Dame players typically achieve to their talent level. This kid's got talent. He's not quite the explosive speed edge of Leonard Floyd. I don't think he's quite that kind of an athlete. He doesn't have that kind of bend. He doesn't get his body parallel to the line of scrimmage when he dips that shoulder. But Okwara is a good football player. He's a smart football player. And I think he would be a real nice pickup. And I don't think he would bust the budget. So personally, I'd love to see them go after one of those two guys. There's a bunch of guys, as you mentioned, and we could name them and go into them. But to me, those are my two favorite.
Yeah, definitely narrowed it down because there's so many potential edge rushers. And when I'm thinking of the edge rusher the 49ers need, it's exactly what you touched on, that D Ford speed rusher off the edge that can really bend that corner and put pressure on quarterbacks in forced fumbles, the strip sacks. Carl Lawson is a guy that I like. He's only 25 years old, was previously with the Bengals, had 8.5 sacks as a rookie, hasn't been able to get to that total ever since, but he had a pretty solid year this past year. Bud Dupree, he would be a nice veteran edge rusher that was with the Steelers for the last several years, has big game experience. Leonard Floyd, you nailed it with his career year with the Rams, had 10.5 sacks. I'm really, really high on him. And then you have Reddick from the Cardinals, Marcus Golden from the Cardinals, who I really, really like. Matthew Judon is another name that he's been with the Ravens for quite some time. And then Tack McKinley, who was born in Oakland. The 49ers picked him up off waivers, and that didn't work out. He ended up going to the Raiders. So there are so many names and a lot of potential. Putting the names aside, these are good football players, quality edge rushers that are getting ready to hit the market. It's going to be a major disappointment, to me at least, if the 49ers don't walk away with at least one of these guys. Because you can tell you need the speed across from Nick Bosa. And when D Ford was on the field in 2019, having that speed element, it completely changed the defense. It took it to another level. So they need to have that element of speed opposite of Bosa. Let's talk about the interior a little bit. I don't think they need to look at anyone like Kaywon Short. He's a high-profile guy that I can't really see the team going after because you have Javon Kinlaw. I really like Kevin Givens. I think he's going to start alongside of Kinlaw on base downs. DJ Jones is a free agent. Do you think the 49ers are going to play around with the interior of the defensive line, or are they pretty set there?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, I love some of the guys they got. I mean, Darian Daniels is strong. Mm-hmm. He had a real nice bust-out year this year. Givens is a gap-shooting guy, penetrator. He's a tremendous football player. I mean, one of the most underrated players, I think, in the league. Mm-hmm. I think re-signing DJ Jones is absolutely essential. You got to have DJ Jones. He's an anchor. Personally, I think if they had DJ in the Super Bowl against Kansas City, they would have won that game because DJ took away the inside run. Damian Williams gouged them in that game running between the tackles. It wouldn't have happened with DJ in there. So I like DJ. I think DJ, I'm encouraged by some of the rankings that he's not ranked all that highly.
I've seen that, yeah.
Now, I think the rankings are done by people that don't know what they're talking about, because I think the people that do know what they're talking about are going to understand that DJ Jones is strong against the run and the pass. He's not a total awesome pass rusher, but he's got quick feet, and he'll put more of a heat on the quarterback than you think. I would say with the 49ers, they need the defensive front. They need to re-sign DJ. I think that's crucial. I think they also need to contend to retain Jordan Willis, Kerry Hyder, Ronald Blair. I want all three of those guys to come back. But still, I want to go after a Leonard Floyd or an Aquara. I want Aquara and Leonard Floyd, and I want to re-sign DJ, and I want to re-sign at least two out of those three between Hyder and Willis and Blair. I know that Saleh is going to make a big play for Blair because he loves Blair. But the Niners do too, and they understand the value of Blair. Blair's got a motor. Blair's tough. He can play inside, outside. He can play in any scheme. He's just a player. He was hurt this year. He didn't play, but that's what I would do. Willis, Blair, and Hyder I'd like. DJ I need. And Floyd, I would choose. I would be my number one guy. And to me, I know a lot of people have said, "Well, the 49ers are paying a lot of money on their defensive front." This is the identity of this football team. The face of the football team is this defensive front. This defensive secondary will not stand up without heat on the quarterback. So there makes no sense to improve the secondary if you're not going to improve the heat on the quarterback. Carl Lawson, the guy that you mentioned, I love, but I think Carl Lawson's going to get huge money. I think
it's a premium position. These guys,
other people love him.
The edge rushers make a lot.
Other people love him. I would say a bargain guy who they might be able to get, who's I think a pretty good veteran player in this area, is Pernell McPhee, who's bounced around a little bit. He was with the Ravens against the Niners in the Super Bowl a few years ago. McPhee still puts some heat on the quarterback. He can play in multiple schemes. I think in this scheme, the wide nine, he would be a really nice player. But yeah, I the other name that I really would be hot to trot on, he played with Bosa's brother with the Chargers, and that's Melvin Ingram.
I like Melvin Ingram too.
I don't know if Ingram's going to get big money or not. If his offers are lower, he's a guy that I've loved him going back to South Carolina. So I think those are the guys I would want.
And I'm following along to the comment section here. We have Alex Faulkner asking about Alden Smith. Do you see Alden Smith coming back to the 49ers, or do you think a reunion between Alden Smith and the 49ers would benefit both parties?
I think it would benefit the Niners. I don't know if you can argue that it would benefit both parties. I mean, he had some rough days here.
Exactly.
I'll say this. I loved what I saw on the football field from Alden Smith last year, but he's got demons. Is he over it? Do they want to get involved there? There's a lot of history there. There's a lot of bad vibes. I'm sure the headline, the 49ers, they'd get roasted. The writers, who cares about the writers? But, they would roast the Niners if they went that direction. But yeah, I think he's a name that makes sense. He can get to the passer. He was the best player on that Cowboy defensive line this year. So if the price was right, I would give it a thumbs up, but I just don't see him going there.
Yeah, great fit for the 49ers, but is bringing him back to the Bay Area, or him making the decision to come back to the Bay Area, the best choice for him? I'm not too sold on that. To circle back, you laid out a lot of the 49ers depth pieces that I also think is important for them, or are important to come back this next season. Ronald Blair, who didn't get to play at all, I'm really high on him as well. I'll add one more name to your list. I like Dion Jordan. He's been a major disappointment, never lived up to his draft status, but I saw some good things from him this past year. And if you can bring him back for around the veteran minimum, I think having as many pass rushers as you can on the 49ers defensive front is really, really going to help out. Kerry Hyder would be great to bring back. He had such a great year, though. I'm sure Robert Saleh would love to have him on the Jets defensive line. So I'd rather see the 49ers take the cap money they have and really get a speed guy like you touched on with Leonard Floyd, someone that can be that D forward pass rusher on the defensive line and put the heat on the quarterback. Let's move it to linebacker.
One quick thought on that is, the guy who everybody loves to rip in Ninerland, and that's Eric Armstead. And if you could take Armstead, who played full-time as a defensive end, if you have Floyd and Bosa, and now you can play Armstead as an interior rusher in a rotation, I think you're going to see him give you the same production that he gave you in far less snaps. It's going to make you a much better football team.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you. More snaps inside for Eric Armstead would be ideal. Linebacker, I think the 49ers are pretty set at linebacker. They have all-pro Fred Warner. They have Dre Greenlaw. Do they need to look to add any bodies there in free agency? The draft is another story, but how about free agency?
Well, it's funny. I think linebacker is the most interesting position in the NFL this offseason because speed has never been more at a premium at linebacker. And so I think the 49ers absolutely need to invest in more speed at linebacker, but they are one of the fastest linebacking units in pro football. So I think it's an area in the draft that I absolutely would attack. There's 3 or 4 guys in the draft I really like. But I don't see them going linebacker inside linebacker or outside linebacker in free agency. I looked at the list of guys. I'm looking at the list here. Kyle Van Noy. There's just not a lot there. I mean, there's just not a lot of guys there. I'm trying to think who else is even a viable candidate.
I don't think there are.
Jared Dave, Christian Kirksey's not a bad player, but I mean, I personally don't think I would go linebacker in free agency. But I do like the idea of picking up speedy linebackers in the draft, and I think it's important that they continue to find speed because that's where that second level speed is really where you can absolutely snuff out teams defensively.
Cornerback. So the 49ers, they have so many guys getting ready to hit free agency. Richard Sherman, I don't personally see coming back. Jason Verrett was able to stay healthy this past year and put together a monster season, was one of the highest graded cornerbacks in the game. I like the upside of Ahkello Witherspoon, but of course he had a very rocky 4 years in Santa Clara. And then you have Kaywon Williams, who I love in the slot. How do you prioritize the 49ers' own cornerback free agents before we start diving into some of the guys that are going to be available on Wednesday?
Well, okay. The hardest position to play is slot corner. Two-way break. You need to be smart. You need to be tough. You need to be fast. You need the total package. So my number one priority is Kaywon Williams. He's small, but that's it. He's a great player. He's great against the run. He's great against the pass. He's got to be a tough guy to hit the way he hits at that size. I'm a little concerned about the durability because he hits like a truck, and he's got a cornerback body. But if I got to prioritize Verrett versus Tart versus K1 and everybody else that's a free agent in that secondary, I got to have K1. K1's the guy I got to have. I want Verrett too, but I got to have K1. So I'm starting with K1. He's the priority, and he's important too because I think he's going to be hard to replace if you don't get him signed. And there are guys who can play this position, but it doesn't mean they're going to play it at the level that he plays it at. So personally, I like two corners in this draft. I'd go K1, and then I'm going after William Jackson, the third from Cincinnati, and I'm going after Ronald Darby. I got reason to believe that Darby is on their list, and I think that Darby wants to come here. I think Darby is a good player, and I think he's had some injuries. He's floated around to a couple spots, but I think Ronald Darby could start opposite Emmanuel Mosley. I think Darby is an underrated player. So Jackson's price tag, I think, is going to be a little higher, but I think Darby makes a lot of sense for the Niners.
Kaywon Williams is also my top priority to bring back. I was going back and forth for a while between Verrett and Williams before I finally decided on Kaywon Williams. And if you look at the 2019 team, the best playmaker in the secondary was Kaywon Williams. Between all the fumbles that he was forcing, the interceptions, he was a playmaker. And I am so high on Kaywon Williams. And I also take into account the durability. Jason Verrett, I'm not convinced he can continue to string together these seasons where he's healthy and playing 14-plus games. So I tweeted something out a couple weeks ago where I'd rather bring back Kaywon Williams and maybe Ahkello Witherspoon. I don't know if he's interested in coming back because I don't know how he feels about the way his career has been handled in San Francisco, but I still think he has so much upside in the way that he played over the course of the final 2-3 weeks of the regular season. I was like, whoa, where has this been? He was, not necessarily showing up DK Metcalf, but getting in his face a little bit, playing with a lot of swagger and moxie. I really like to see that from him. And I'd rather see the 49ers invest in the pass rush and not so much spend a lot of money in the secondary. Guys like William Jackson, you nailed it, are going to be more costly, likely out of their price range. And maybe they go cornerback in the draft. But there's a couple names. Sidney Jones has been so injured. The Eagles drafted him in the second round, played his college ball at Washington, played his last year with the Jaguars. I wonder if that's a guy the 49ers kick the tires on just to see if he can stay healthy for a full season, because there's a lot of potential there with Sidney Jones. Who else do I got at the cornerback position? AJ Boye. I'm not exactly sure how the last name is pronounced, but AJ Boye was with the Texans, with the Jaguars, then with the Broncos. He has nice size, was a Pro Bowler, first team All-Pro, I believe, not too long ago. So those are a couple guys. And I have one more name. Desmond King may be a guy to keep an eye on that can come in and play that nickel role. He was an All-Pro with the Chargers before being traded to the Titans, and he has special teams value as a punt returner. So Desmond King's another name that I like.
And this, they may want to look around this is a tough spot, because it's not a great list of corners.
It's not.
I'll say this though. I've looked at the draft and I love the corners in this draft. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be day 3 corners that are going to be worth watching. The Oregon State kid, Nashawn Wright, is a 6'4" corner. There's a kid who played for NC Central named Brian Mills, who's a 6'3", 6'4" corner. St. Just, a big corner from the University of Minnesota, is goes about 6'4". There's a bunch of corners in this draft. I love the Washington corner, Keith Taylor, who played in the Pac-12 this year. He's another 6'3", 6'4" corner. I can't remember a year. Rochelle is a good corner, played for Central Arkansas. I can't remember a year where there were this many good-looking corners in the draft that were projected for day 3. So I know there's a lot of talk. Well, you got to get a Surtain. I don't buy that. I like the cornerback depth in this draft. One other name to remember here is I just think that there's a very good chance that Stefan Gilmore gets moved and from the Patriots. And if Jimmy is going to be dealt to the Patriots, I could see Stefan Gilmore being part of that. They want to move him. The Niners have a severe need. He's a tremendous player, even at a high price. Heck, if they really liked him, they could trade for him and extend him and basically take that salary down a little bit. Yeah, give him a year or two. Gilmore, I know he's not the Gilmore that he was when he was a Defensive Player of the Year guy, but he's not. He hasn't lost that much, and I really like him. We also had a guy from South Carolina. Everybody talks about J.C. Horn. Yeah. Mukaamu, I should say. Israel Ukamamu. I think I'm butchering the name, but he plays free safety and corner for South Carolina, big-bodied corner. So I like the draft for corners, but I'll say this. You have to get at least one. It's such a need that they have to get at least one for sure. They need to re-sign either Verrett or Williams for sure, and sign somebody and hit it in the draft. That's how severe this need is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Jaquiski Tartt, the safety position. I don't see Tartt coming back. Do you see Tartt coming back?
I love Tartt. I really do. I think Tartt's a really good player. But when I watched the Niners this year, I felt like Jimmy Ward is better now at strong safety. I know they liked him as the single high in a cover 3, playing the deep middle, but that's not what he's best at now. He used to be a corner, but his best thing is he will starch you in the run game, and he's smart. And he can play corner in a pinch. He can play free safety in a pinch. But if you want to improve your coverage, you better have him at playing strong safety and go get yourself a free safety. So they have Marcel Harris and they have
Tarvarius Moore.
Well, Tarvarius is going to play free safety. He's more of a developmental guy to me. Taking at angles. He's probably the best athlete they have in the secondary, to be honest. But I would rather them let Tartt go, move Jimmy Ward to strong safety, with Marcel, and then go get a Malik Hooker. Go get somebody who can play free safety and play that deep middle, and have two safeties who can cover. It's a rush and cover game. And Tart, in my opinion, is almost to a weak side linebacker type player. He's a thumper. He's a run guy. He's a box safety. But man, I mean, you can get guys in free agency right now who can come in and play in the box. I mean, Carl Joseph can play in the box if you want that. The former Raider. I was looking at a guy who's the guy from the Charger, DJ Swearinger, who played for Arizona, is a thumper. So personally, I've looked at all the safeties. I like Malik Hooker. I think Malik Hooker, at Ohio State. I think he can come up with interceptions. He can give you interception production. I like in a game where you got to cover. I'd rather have Malik Hooker at free safety and Ward at strong than Tart at strong and Ward at free.
Yeah, Malik Hooker is definitely one of the safeties I'd like to see the 49ers target. And it's hard to imagine him costing too much despite being a first-round pick because he hasn't been able to stay on the field. And when he has been able to stay on the field, he has a knack for creating turnovers. So I'm right there with you on Malik Hooker. Let's get to quarterback. What is your stance on the 49ers with Jimmy Garoppolo? How should they navigate the waters that is the quarterback position?
Well, I've heard so much faulty logic on this offseason that I don't even know where to start. Just because he's not the worst doesn't mean you can't want to move on. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. This idea that, there are worse quarterbacks. Okay. But the fear of the unknown, would you rather, to me, the fear of the known is I don't know if Kellen Mond is the guy. I don't know if Zach Wilson is the guy. I don't know if Justin Fields is the guy. But I know that Jimmy Garoppolo is not the guy. And I'm watching a guy consistently regress. So it's time to move on from Jimmy. People talk about, he's just had the injuries. No, it's not just the injuries. He doesn't throw down the field. He doesn't identify the rush. Since he's had the injuries, he doesn't escape the rush. He doesn't go through progressions. He doesn't throw a great deep ball. In the biggest moments of his career, they took the ball out of his hands. He played poorly in the Super Bowl. I've seen enough. I've seen enough. So I'm not mad at him, but I don't need to bring him back anymore and to know what he is. So personally, I would move on. Now, the nice thing is I think New England is in a different spot. They got a 70-year-old head coach. He doesn't want to draft Mac Jones and wait 3.5 years, Bill Belichick. They're impatient. They just watched the quarterback that they gave up on win the Super Bowl, and they didn't even make the playoffs. So Belichick, for his own legacy, has to get back to the playoffs next year. And I think there are very few quarterbacks at this point who can get him there, but Jimmy's one of them. So I would say trade Jimmy to the Patriots, hold them up for a second-round pick in Gilmore and maybe even a day 3 pick, and move down the road. And personally, you got 3 guys in your quarterback room, maybe as many as 4. Who do you want in that room? Okay, this is who I want in that room. In an ideal world, I'd like Zach Wilson in that room or Justin Fields, but I don't know that they are going to be able to trade up. To me, you need athleticism and you need a guy who loves to play football and is a film junkie. That's what football is at the quarterback position. There's no such thing as I'm a great quarterback, but I don't watch film. You live to watch film or you don't. You're not playing for me. And the guy who lives to watch film is Kellen Mond.
Kellen Mond,
great athlete. He lives to watch film. He's probably a 3rd or 4th round pick. I would get him in the 2nd. I would use my 2nd round pick on Kellen Mond to make sure that I got him. So now I got a quarterback who loves to watch film, but he doesn't have a whole lot of experience. So I need a quarterback who can play in a pinch and is good at developing quarterbacks, because let's be honest, Mullins, Beathard, and Garoppolo have not developed in this system in the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean the quarterback coach is no good? Does that mean that Kyle's not good at developing quarterbacks? I don't know what that means. But I do know that Alex Smith is a great developer of quarterbacks and a great watcher of film. And so Smith is in my room. So now I have Mond, and I have Smith, and I have Rosen. And I think I'm even going to take a day 3 flyer on a 4th quarterback that I want in camp. Maybe it's Ian Book from Notre Dame. Maybe it's Felipe Franks from Arkansas. Maybe it's Davis Mills from Stanford. Maybe it's Malik Willis from Liberty. There's a few guys on my list. Maybe it's the Wake Forest kid, Jamie Newman.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I'd like to have Alex Smith and 3 prospects that all potentially could hit. And Rosen could be the guy. Mond could be the guy. The day 3 guy could be the guy. But I think that's the route I would go at quarterback. Bring me Alex. Let him play that 2 role. Go get a Mond. And if you got to go with Alex or Rosen, so be it. I think Mond will be ready to go. But that's the route I would go. I would take that extra money. I'd build up my football team. I would trade Garoppolo away for a couple assets that would improve my football team, and I'm getting down the road.
Mm-hmm. My initial thoughts with your idea, that it's going to require a lot of patience, right? Because if you're taking Mond on day 2, certain people, depending on who you talk to, a lot of people feel differently on Kellen Mond. Chris Sims has him as his 4th-ranked quarterback, and Chris Sims has been as good as anybody as far as projecting quarterbacks over the last couple of years. He has him above Trey Lance and Justin Fields. So Kellen Mond, there's a lot of upside there. I like Mond a lot. Alex, the question for me is who's starting week 1? I guess you just have to have that training camp competition to see a preseason, if there's a preseason next year, to see who's going to take over week 1 as a starting quarterback. As far as Jimmy Garoppolo goes, I think this is the year where the 49ers just need to rip off the Band-Aid and move on. That you can tell there's not a long-term commitment. And if Garoppolo is the quarterback in 2021, this is probably going to be a floor of being 7-9, maybe 8-8. That's where I see this team being, regardless of how everything kind of pans out the rest of the way. I think that's their floor. And with that being said, you're not going to be picking 12th overall. This is your opportunity to find the quarterback of the future. And I think that's what's most important this offseason, right up there with bringing back Trent Williams, is identifying a quarterback who can be the face of the franchise, for the next 10 years. And you have the draft picks to be able to move up and get a guy like Justin Fields, who I like. There's just so many prospects to like this specific draft. And, of course, Deshaun Watson's available. The 49ers need to do something big. That's kind of where I'm at with the whole quarterback situation.
I'm not even considering Watson. If you can get Deshaun Watson, if somebody's going to trade you a franchise Pro Bowl quarterback who's 25 and a great guy. If you can get him, go for it. I don't like Sam Darnold, though.
I don't like Sam Darnold either. Yeah,
picks at USC with a great team, and now he's on a bad team and is still throwing tons of picks. I think he's fool's gold. It's a tough call. I don't know if Mond can do it. I know Jimmy can't do it. So it's just a matter of, and Jimmy played poorly when it mattered. And, let's be honest, Kyle Shanahan's offense with the 49ers does not resemble the Kyle Shanahan offense that led the league when he had Matt Ryan in Atlanta. They were going 3 and 4 and 5 wide and throwing it all over the place there and running the ball, with a 2-headed monster. Here, it's like run some more. Jimmy made some really questionable throws in that first playoff game. Immediately, Kyle took the ball out of his hands for the rest of the next 2 playoff games. And when they needed him in the Super Bowl, he played terribly. He had the interception off his back foot in the first half. Terrible throw. And he was 2 for 10 for like 24 yards and a pick in his throws. He showed you what he was in the Super Bowl. They showed you what they think of him by how they coached him and how they let him play within their offense. So, it's a tough call because, I'm sure he's a good guy. Kittle's saying, oh, he's a great guy. We can win with this guy. Yeah, you know what? You didn't. Players are the last people that I ever want to really listen to in this situation because, they have personal. They're buddies. They're friends. They play golf together. How are you going to sit there and say bad things about your buddy publicly? You're not. So I don't expect the players to say anything but positive things about Jimmy. I just don't think he can get it done. I don't think he can handle the pressure in the pocket. I don't think he can escape the pocket. And then I don't think he can stay healthy. The NFL quarterback, you got to play, man. You got to play every game. He's played 52% of the games since they've gotten him in that trade. If you showed up for your job 52% of the time, you'd be fired. If I showed up for my job 52% of the time, I'd be fired. He should be fired. Time to move on.
Yep, time to move on. Deshaun Watson, would you trade 4 first-round picks for him? Is that too much for you?
I don't think you can make a bad trade, to be honest, for Deshaun Watson, unless because I mean, first of all, if you have a great head coach, and I believe they do, and if you have a great quarterback, and I believe they do, you're 2/3 of the way to being a Super Bowl winning franchise. So I don't see 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, I don't love it. I would rather not, but I would say this: I would not be in a huge rush to trade your star players. Why? Because I don't think people realize how many picks you make trying to find star players, so that where you miss on it. So when you hit on a star player, that's a pick that you hit on. You can't afford to get rid of too many of those guys. I wouldn't. If I had to trade Warner, I guess I would, if that was the key to the deal. If I had to trade Bosa, I guess I would, if it was the key to the deal. But then, you're just tearing down a part of your football team that you need to immediately, build back up. Mm-hmm. The one thing about the Deshaun Watson stuff, though, I don't think people are looking at clearly, is that we're assuming that it's going to take a king's ransom to acquire Deshaun Watson. But if you really think about this logically, one side is going to have the leverage. The question is, who has the leverage? If you believe it's the Texans, then screw Deshaun Watson. But if it's Deshaun, then the Texans have a problem. And I just think if you study the history of these fractures, the player has the advantage. The free agency is one of the only ways to improve your team in the NFL. Players will side with players. Players, if there's a sentiment around the NFL that the Texans have done Deshaun wrong, they'll never sign a top-tier free agent again. They'll never win a free agent battle, for a player again. So ultimately, if the players feel like they're screwing around with him, they're going to have to trade him. Now, he's got a no-trade clause. So what if he gets angered by them not giving him what he wants and just says, you know what? I told you before I want to be traded. Now I want to be traded to the Niners. Or I'm not playing.
Yeah.
First-year head coach, first-year GM. You have no track record of success. Your career is dangling by a thread. You can't sell sponsorships. You can't sell tickets. Your star quarterback, who your players all like and your city likes, basically says, trade me to Team A. Well, guess what? What are you going to do? You're going to flip him the bird and tell him no? No. You're going to trade him to Team A. So this whole notion that somehow, and we had John McClain on, and God bless the guy, he's a good guy. But I mean, delusional. I mean, you're not getting our message to the Texans. You're not getting fair value. Why do you think you're getting fair value? You botched this situation. You're not getting fair. It's not your birthright to get fair value for this player. It's hardball. It's big time hardball negotiations. So I've heard people suggest that they have the leverage. They'll just let him sit. Really? You're really going to do that? You're going to kill your franchise and ruin your first-year head coach, ruin your general manager's track record, all to basically win some game of chicken with your quarterback. So what? So the rest of the league feels like you bullied him? They don't have the leverage. And if you look at the 49ers, what can the 49ers do that some of these other teams can't do? They can do nothing. They can just sit there because they don't need a quarterback. They have a quarterback. So if you're the Niners, you're sitting chilly. Just sit there and wait for this thing to unravel. And I think there's a very good chance it could unravel in your favor. And Deshaun could very easily go to the Texans and say, hey, you know what? Trade me to the Niners. And then in that situation, why would you pay for fair market value? I'd say, hey, here's the 12th pick. Here's our first round pick next year. Here's Tarvarius Moore, and send Deshaun over. And when they say, oh, that's not enough, you say, all right, what are you going to do? Call their bluff. So I personally think the Niners have the leverage in this. I think they understand that they have the leverage in this, and I think they're just hanging out. I think they're not – the one thing with the 49ers is they will not ruin their season for this, where the Panthers might. It sounds like David Tepper wants Deshaun no matter what and doesn't really care about the season. And the Texans clearly, if they're going to try to play chicken with their star quarterback, they clearly don't care about winning this year. The 49ers do. So there will be some cutoff point where the Niners just say, you know what, we're not looking at that anymore. We're going this direction. But it's not today, and it's not tomorrow, and it's not before the draft, and they hold more leverage than some of these other teams. And I think the Texans are going to come to a point where they realize we either have to trade Deshaun for the best trade we can get today, or we're going to potentially either get stuck with a cancerous situation that drags our whole franchise into the mud for the whole year and into the future, or we may wind up having to trade this player at a severe loss, in right before the season, or in. Yeah. So personally, I think it's really riveting to watch, but I think Deshaun owns all the leverage here, and it could really play well for the Niners potentially.
Yeah, the long game, and just as far as process elimination goes, because once you go through the draft, let's say the Jets, if they're not sold on Sam Darnold and they take Zach Wilson at 2, the Panthers are rumored to really like Trey Lance and all the other quarterbacks that are going to be in that range. So as you get through these stages of the offseason, other teams are kind of eliminated from the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes. And like you touched on, you have the leverage with Garoppolo, you have the placeholder, you have your starting quarterback, someone in place, while these other teams do not. And that can keep the 49ers in the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes. I was kind of advocating for the team to move Garoppolo prior to free agency because you clear up the extra $23 million in cap space. But the con of that, of course, is it tips your hand. You don't have the starting quarterback in place anymore. So you can't really sell these teams that teams know what you want to do in the draft because you don't have Jimmy Garoppolo there anymore. But holding on to Garoppolo, you have that leverage that you nailed as far as the Deshaun Watson debacle goes. Final thought, Larry. Oh, go ahead.
Another factor here that I heard today, and that is Ryan Pace, the general manager of the Chicago Bears, and Matt Nagy, the head coach of the Chicago Bears, are both on the hot seat. Those guys are going to be fired. They know it. They don't have a quarterback. It sounds like they're willing to trade a boatload of picks to Seattle for Russell Wilson. And, you sit there and go, well, wait a second. That's interesting. A boatload of picks, Russell Wilson. Okay, Russell Wilson in Chicago. Oh, well, who's the quarterback for Seattle? Well, they don't have one. But they do. They may have a bucket full of picks from the Bears. So, that's something to watch on a couple angles. One, if the Bears give the Seahawks a ton of draft capital, Seahawks could flip that draft capital to Houston and get Deshaun Watson, and we could be looking at Deshaun Watson in the division going forward. Or if somehow that trade blows up, Russell stays in Seattle, you still have a very desperate general manager and head coach in Chicago. Where's Jimmy Garoppolo from? Chicago. They need to make a splash. You might be able to rip them off for Jimmy and get maybe a player, maybe a couple picks, because if they don't get Russell, they're not going back to Trubisky. They don't believe in Foles. Where's Chicago going to go? And those are two guys who don't want to be fired at the end of the year. If they make the trade for Jimmy and he plays well, they keep their jobs. If they don't get Russell and they don't get Jimmy, they got to go into the draft for a rookie. These guys very easily could be gone at the end of the year, and they know it. So Chicago's a team to really watch here.
My final question for you. So you laid out your plan as far as who you want in the 49ers quarterback room, or Kellen Mond, second round. What would you do with the 49ers first overall pick, or their first round pick, 12th overall?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't do anything before the draft. I've looked at a bunch of these mock drafts. I've gone through the simulators. There is a chance that a truly special player falls in their lap. And they got to be there to catch that player if that happens. And when I'm saying that, I'm thinking of Jamar Chase. There's a couple different – or Justin Fields. When I do these different simulators, I would say, 4 or 5 times, Jamar Chase and Justin Fields wind up at 12. And if that is the case, I'm not thinking twice for either. I'm taking Justin Fields at 12 or I'm taking Jamar Chase. I think Jamar Chase is one of the best wide receivers I've seen in a long, long time. So I think he's so much better than Justin Jefferson and you name it. I mean, you name all these SEC receivers, I think Jamar Chase is the best of them. So if I'm staying at 12 and seeing if Chase falls and I'm seeing if Fields falls, the other guy who I think potentially could fall is Micah Parsons. You know, Penn State has an incredible linebacker U reputation. Parsons is just an absolute, for sure, Pro Bowl linebacker. So, and fast and instinctive. So I love those three guys. But let's just say you get to 12 and none of them are on the board. I would trade back for a team. Let's say you know Trey Lance or Mac Jones is there, and Kyle for whatever reason doesn't want to go that direction. I would trade back. I like the Georgia defensive end Azeez Ojulari. You know, he's 245 pounds, but he's just lightning off the edge. We're talking about Leonard Floyd flying off the edge. Ojulari even flies faster off the edge. So Ojulari would be a guy that, to me, he showed this year. I think he had 10 sacks. I mean, the guy was incredible. He is an absolute pass rushing fiend. So he would be a guy I would be very interested in. The Notre Dame linebacker who's built more like a safety, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, is a tremendous player, and he's so fast and so versatile that he gives you the ability to disguise your coverages because of what he can be as a coverage player. So he's so special that I would be interested in him. I'd be interested in an Ojulari. But I definitely think if I wouldn't, you know, I'm picking at 12 if one of those three guys is there. If they're not there, I'd like to trade back potentially in the early 20s. Come up with a couple more day 2 picks if possible. And start my draft that way.
So if Justin Fields is there at 12, you'd rather have Fields at 12 than Mon in the second round, correct?
I like Fields a lot. I mean, I do like Fields a lot. I don't know if I'd rather have him. That would be a tough call, but I would rather have Jamar Chase. So if Jamar falls to 12, I'm taking Jamar Chase. If Jamar Chase is not falls to 12 and Parsons is not there either, then I'm trading back. And Fields, it would be a tough call. That would be a tough call. But, you know, I'm impressed by Fields, but I like the idea of Mond as well. I'll say this, though. The idea that Chris Sims had the other day of drafting Mond at 12, I mean, you know, what are you, Mike Mayock? You know, I mean, my goodness, you have to be able to understand the draft a little bit better. I mean, you can't just take, you know, like he took Clelin Ferrell 4th overall, you know, when he was rated in the 30s. You know, you have to have some knowledge of the board. So I would, if they loved Mond, and I do like Mond quite a bit, I still wouldn't take him at 12. I would try to trade back into the mid-20s and see if I can.
Well, you brought up Jamar Chase, one more SEC playmaker. What about Kyle Pitts? Do you like Kyle Pitts at 12 if he's around?
Well, it's interesting because, I mean, are you going to commit to going double tight end sets? What are you bringing back Jordan Reed? I mean, I'm not, you know, I like Jordan Reed. I thought Jordan Reed was comfortable here. Kyle likes him, knows him. He was happy in this system. I'd almost rather re-sign Jordan Reed. They're bringing Dwelly back. You've got Kittle. Go with Charlie Warner. I agree. Pitts is a very special player. 6'6", 240, rangy, great hands. He's a tremendous player as a receiver. But you know, I don't know that he's an inline blocker. So no, I don't think I would take a tight end who wasn't an inline blocker when I have one of the best tight ends in football. I have a ton of other needs. As intriguing as Pitts is. Personally, I don't think he's going to be on the board at 12. I think when people start to really do deep dives on these guys, they're going to see this is a great receiver, and I think he's going to go top 7, top 8. But no, I don't think I'd go Pitts at 12.
All right, Larry. Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate having you on.
Hey, anytime, man. Appreciate it. and go Niners, huh? Well, I'm sure we'll
Go
get
Niners.
Maybe we can do this again before the draft.
Absolutely.